Hi guys! So this week we are talking about how to measure using rulers. So last week we learned how we can measure using non-standard objects. So that means that I can take a bunch of paper clips and measure measure a book, and I can say the book is 5 paper clips long. But this week we're going to talk about standard measurements. So standard measurements are the kind of measurements that everybody uses. So when you look at a ruler, it will look something like this, and you'll see that one side has this word inch, and the other side has cm. That stands for centimeter. So those are two of the most common measurements that people across the world use. We're going to focus today on inches because in America we use inches, feet, yards, those sorts of measurements. So we're going to focus on this side of the ruler right here. So you'll see it has the word inch, and then you'll also see it's got numbers. So this is a short ruler just so that I can give you guys some examples, but we have 1 inch right here. You can see the 1. Here's 2 inches is this long line next to the 2. 3 inches is the long line next to the 3. 4 inches is this long line next to the 4. 5 inches is this long line next to the 5, and then on this ruler we end at 6 inches would be the end. If you have a ruler at home, your ruler might keep going. A lot of rulers go up to 12 inches, which is the same thing as a foot, but ours only goes up to 6. So the longest lines on a ruler are the ones that show you inches. Okay, so this is 1 whole inch. This is 2 whole inches, this is 3 whole inches, this is 4 whole inches, okay? And you can see in between these inches, there are a lot of other lines in here. And when you start to get up to 3rd grade and 4th grade, they'll teach you what all of those lines mean. But for today, I really just want you guys to focus on the inches. And then in a couple minutes, we're going to learn about one of the other lines. But for now, we're just going to focus on our 1 inch lines. So this would be 1 inch because it's right next to the 1. 2 inches is right next to the 2. 3 inches right next to the 3. Okay, let's look at our next slide and start to measure. So when you're measuring, you take your object. So right now I have a comb and I have this ruler, and I need to make sure that my object is lined up very carefully with the end of my ruler. So I'm going to take my comb and I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to make sure that the end of the comb lines up exactly with this ruler. Okay, so I could go like this just to make sure, but basically right about there is where the end of my comb should be lining up with the end of the ruler. Okay, so then I look across and I can see my 1 inch line, and I can think, well, it's definitely more than 1 inch. And then I see my 2 inch line right here, and I say it's definitely more than 2 inches. And I see my 3 inch line, still going, it's definitely more than 3 inches. There's my 4 inch line, it's definitely more than 4 inches. And then I get to my 5 inch line, and look, that's pretty close, right? That 5 inch line lines up pretty closely with the end of my comb. It's a little bit over, but for today, we're just going to be kind of estimating. So 5 inches is what I would say is the length of this comb. So I could write 5, and I already have inches written out. Okay, let's measure a couple other things. So here we have a bird and a paper clip. Let's start with the paper clip. So again, I'm going to take my paper clip and I'm going to make sure that I'm lining up the end of the paper clip with the end of my ruler very carefully, and I'm going to move my ruler, and I want to make sure, here we go, we're all lined up. So now I'm going to look and see which inch is this closest to. I'm lined up here. This would be 0 inches. It's not closer to that, right? And then we've got 1 inch right here. And it looks like it's about 1 inch. That's the inch that it's closest to on the ruler, right? So we would say that that paper clip is about 1 inch long. Okay, let's try the bird. So for this one, I'm going to put my bird in the middle of the screen, and I'm going to move my ruler around. So I'm going to take my ruler, and the bird is a little tricky because she's got a bunch of different stuff, but I want to make sure that I'm lining up with the end of her beak because that's the furthest side that I can see over here. So I'm going to line it up with the beak. And then I want to measure to the end of her wings. So let's see. The end of her wings is about here. So now let's count our inches. So we start at 0. Here's 0 inches. It's definitely more than that, right? Then we get to 1 inch. It's definitely more than 1 inch. 2 inches. Definitely more than 2 inches. 3 inches. Definitely more than 3. And then we get to 4. And we can see that's the inch that it's closest to on the ruler. So we would say that this bird is about 4 inches long because that's the inch that it's closest to. Okay? So the only other thing that you are going to see, and we won't practice this very much, but the only other thing that you're going to see today as you do your own work is you might see things that are sort of in between. So if I take this Xbox controller and I line it up like that, we can count off our inches, and we know this is 1 inch, definitely more, 2 inches, it's definitely more than that, 3 inches, definitely more than that, 4 inches, and then we get to something like this, where the Xbox is kind of in between. So on your own work today, you'll see that sometimes things are closer to this long middle line right here, and we say this is a half line. So this would be 4.5 inches, okay? So we would write that like this, 4 1/2. I'm really only telling you about halves because you are going to see it on your work today, but I don't want you to worry about it, okay? I really, for today, just want you guys to focus on measuring in single inches. So 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, 4 inches, and then it would be up to you to decide whether you think that this is closer to 4 inches or closer to 5 inches. So if I'm looking, it's sort of below the half mark, so this is closer to 4 inches, okay? So you guys are going to be going to something that looks like this as your work. You'll see when you click on it, you can move this ruler around. So you can take the ruler and you line it up. Remember, make sure that the end is closest to the mouth. And once you find the spot where you want your ruler, you click, and that will put the ruler and it'll make it stay where you want it to be. So then you can look. So here's 0 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. And this fish is closest to 3 inches. So I would click right here in this box, click on the 3 for 3 inches, and click OK. And then it will bring you a new fish, and you do the same thing. You're going to line up your ruler. Once you think it's in a good spot, click on it, and then measure your fish, okay? Over here, I do want to point something out to you. You can make it go to centimeters, so if it looks weird, if you get a ruler that looks different, that's fine. It's not really a big deal because we're just practicing measuring, but if you notice that it looks weird, make sure that there's this little dot in inches, okay? And you can also change the level and make it harder, but I'm not sure that you're going to want to do that. But if you're interested, you can make it a little bit harder by clicking on this level button, okay? So your job today is going to be to practice measuring using this ruler, and then the only thing that you are going to have to do is this, okay? So go ahead, go off, get some practice in, and let me know if you guys have any questions.